Welcome back to another episode of Teacher T. I'm so happy you're here. In today's episode, we're going to talk about distractions in the classroom and how cell phones are one of the biggest distractions for students today. I see this firsthand in the classrooms. I'm in gen ed classrooms supporting all day long, and this has been a really big problem and kind of like a hot topic that I have been thinking about for a really long time. I'm a special education teacher. I've been teaching for 9 years. I used to teach in a self-contained structured setting classroom. I also taught elementary school, and now I am an inclusion special education teacher. So that means I'm in classrooms all day long. And for the last few months since August, I have seen firsthand how distracted students are in the classroom. Because I am a support teacher, I'm not always primarily like up teaching and instructing the class. I'm supporting, so I'm either reteaching, I'm maybe we have like a co-teaching dynamic where one teacher teaches for a little bit and the other one does. Right now I'm just learning the content and I'm primarily supporting students in class. So as somebody who's supporting, I literally see everything that's going on in the classroom, and the cell phones, well, let me back up. Cell phones and playing games on the computer are two of the biggest things that I see that are distracting students today. And I guess I just want to make this episode because I'd love for this to be a call to parents, a call to educators, and a call just to everyone to do a little mental note and a check-in of like, what's your cell phone usage? How much are you distracted throughout your day? How productive are you throughout your day? And like, how is your cell phone either helping or hindering your success throughout the day, whether you're a student or a teacher, or maybe you're not either one of those and you just want to have a more productive life? Like, how much is your cell phone impacting you? I know from firsthand, I used to be horribly addicted to my phone, and I was horribly addicted to Facebook for years. When I was in college, I used to sit on Facebook for hours and scroll. So I was working during the day as a TA at school, and then I was going to classes and either learning online or going like physically to classes. And on the nights that I was supposed to go home from work and do homework, I found myself sitting and scrolling on Facebook. And for me, Facebook was the one that was the app that would get me for hours. I was scrolling for hours. I would look up and it would be 3 hours had gone by, and I had just gone down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole on social media. And I could have been doing my homework. I was like, I hope I don't fail my classes because I need to be working on this classwork. I say all that to say that this episode is coming from a place of love and also from a place of like experience. I know what it's like to be extremely distracted and extremely addicted to my cell phone and social media. And when I was in college, I had to completely deactivate my account. Like, I could not even get on the app. And the funny thing was, is after I deactivated it, I was so used to, like, my body was so, in my brain, I was so used to getting on the app every day after work that I had to delete the app, or I would like log myself back in. But I would get on my phone, and I was so used to getting on it that I'd scroll through all my apps and find myself going to the app, even though I was like, oh, wait, I already deleted that. I can't get on that. So it's just like ingrained in us, and it's crazy. I also want to say that technology is also kind of like a beautiful thing, and we wouldn't have some of the things that we have today without technology. So this is not a slam to technology. This is just number one, what I'm seeing in class, and two, just like a call to action for everyone who is helping influence and shape young minds and young lives. And how can we like teach them to appropriately engage and use their cell phones and social media, but also still be as successful as they can be in the classroom without as many distractions? So, okay, I did some research for this episode, and I'll try to link all of the articles down below, but I wanted to just start off with some like eye-opening things. And educationweek.org says teens receive 273 notifications a day. So think of how many notifications that is for a student and a teenager whose brain's not even like fully developed, just receiving like all those notifications and dopamine hits like every single time it comes through. K12dive.com, I hope I wrote that down correctly, says 97% of teens use their phones during the school day, which is not something that we didn't already know, hence this whole episode. And then on that same website, they did a study of like how many times kids get on their phones or like check their phone per day. And they found that the median use of time was 4 hours per day, and they pick up their phones at least 51 times per day. That was like the median number, and the numbers ranged from 2 times to 498 times. I thought that was a pretty eye-opening statistic. So some of these articles that I found had some positive things to say about cell phones being in the classrooms, and I guess that there's this whole movement of banning cell phones in the classroom. I'm not here to say whether that movement is right or wrong. There are teachers who believe that cell phones should be banned in the classroom, and there are probably some who believe that they need to be put away, but they can also be beneficial. So I feel like I probably fall somewhere in between those beliefs, but I just want to kind of present some information because A, I do think it's a problem, but B, I think there's also solutions and things that we can do to kind of help. And that's kind of what I want to bring to light today. So I hope I say this right. This is an article from 2017, so it is dated a little bit. It's not one of the newest articles, but from capononline.org is The Distracted Mind, Enhancing Its Focus and Attention. So this article, not only did it go into like the history of technologies and like how we got here today and like how did the start of technology and where we are now, like how did humans slowly become distracted and addicted to these technologies over time. And I thought it was a really interesting article, even though it's kind of outdated. So one of the really high points is, and one of the things that schools are wanting to do is like ban cell phones completely or have like really strict rules on them. And like right now at my school, we have a strict rule of no cell phones in the classroom, but every student has a cell phone. So it's like we're not enforcing that rule. We're really just managing what do we do when you get your cell phone out? Like, then what do we do? At my school, we can no longer like take up your phone if you refuse to give it to us. So that's another point. The crazy thing from this article that I didn't really even realize until I read this article was that when teens have their phones taken away, there's an increase in anxiety within them. So, like when they don't have it with them, it causes anxiety. Also in the article, if they have the phone sitting right next to them and a notification goes off but they can't look at it and they can't check the notification, that also causes anxiety. And then think back to the stat that we said earlier where the kids are receiving 273 notifications a day. Like, that is just crazy. It's almost like sometimes we're walking around like with this little anxiety device, especially if we can't check it. Highly anxious and sometimes visibly agitated, definitely have seen that when they're not allowed to check their phones. Students also think, and I think adults think this as well, that we can multitask when we are doing something on our phone and doing something else that's like, educational or work related. And in a later article, we'll find that we actually don't multitask, and I'll kind of reveal what they now are calling that. I'm sure some of you may already know. The last point that I wanted to bring up from this article: the average adolescent or young adult finds it difficult to study for 15 minutes at a time. So they cannot sit down, or they are struggling to just sit down and study without checking the phone, without receiving a notification, without doing something that is not the task at hand. And I felt like that statistic was also really eye-opening. And just think about it, like when you have your phone all day long, if you are on multiple social media apps, if you are texting or talking to multiple people through text messages or through these apps, you're receiving notification after notification, like you're jumping from this to this to this to this. And no wonder it's so time consuming, because it takes up so much time to talk to all of those people and to reply to posts or like things or scroll through and see what other people are posting. So it's just an all encompassing distractor, is what it is. Oh, one thing I did want to point, when they go into the history of how did we get here today, where when we first had technology, like I remember one of my first cell phones had the game Snake on it, and I could text people and I could call people and I could play a couple of games, but we didn't have all of these apps like in all of the social media. And I don't even remember when I got Facebook on my phone. Like, It also talks about the like integration of the World Wide Web onto your cell phone. So it used to be like when I was in school, we had instant messenger, but when it was time to go out and play with our friends, like off the computer, put your away message up, XOXO, talk to you later, out hanging out with my friends, my girls, whatever. And then you go out and play, and you're not like constantly getting and receiving these notifications until you get back. But that sparks a whole other conversation because the anxiety that you would sometimes feel if you didn't have someone like message you while you were away, or if you would log on and your friend wasn't also logged on, or your crush wasn't also logged on, that was also kind of like a bummer. So I don't know. This is just kind of goes into where it all started, but it talks about how like the World Wide Web and then the cell phones were separate. So we could connect to people on the cell phones, but it wasn't until the internet was placed on the phones, or we started using the phones as the internet and the computer where it was all encompassing, is when the spike of distraction and addiction just really increases, which I thought was kind of crazy. Boston Children's Digital Wellness Lab, their article is What the Science Says Smartphones in Schools. So obviously, it's no secret that teachers report that cell phones are one of the biggest distractors in school. I would report that cell phones and games on the computer are, but that's just what I personally see right now. 72% of high school teachers and a third of middle school teachers say that students being distracted by their cell phones in the classroom is a major problem. So we already know that. Some of their studies show that there are some positive effects on banning cell phones, but another study found that there was very little improvement. That might go back to the anxiety that kids face when they actually don't have the phone with them. They also reported that students demonstrate lower test scores and poorer working memory capacity. And if you're a teacher that doesn't really necessarily believe in the test scores, because I'm one of those teachers where I'm like, you need multiple data points and multiple things to support how a child is progressing, not just a test score. I think the thing that's more eye-opening is the poor working memory capacity. I feel like because like our attention is just so easily pulled, that's got to play into that, which is a really important thing. Some of the positives, though, students use cell phones like adults do. So a lot of times at school, there are kids who use them to as a planner, like they're putting their assignments in their phone of when they need to work on them, when they're due. They communicate with their family and friends. They schedule things through their cell phones. Like some of them, are really using them like adults and not just necessarily getting on apps. Although adults get on apps too. So, but I think it's important to say that there are some kids who are positively using cell phones throughout their day, in addition to maybe getting on social media. Within this article, another positive was that the cell phone can provide maybe like a sense of safety, knowing that they have a connection. I know I feel safer when I have my phone, just like when I'm driving, in case something were to happen. Knock on wood, as I'm driving, I know that I can get a hold of my fiance immediately if I need to. Um, and also, in light of all of the things that are going on with schools and being able to have your phone and communicate with your family in a timely manner, I think is also really important. And then a negative that they mentioned in this article is implementing a ban on all smartphones could actually be really difficult for admin in schools to implement. So just like our school, like no cell phones allowed in the classroom, like it's hard to implement because they are so addicted to them. They have them right there. It's inevitable that they're going to get their phone out of their backpack or their pocket unless they just don't have one. The next article and the last one that I'm going to reference this is from March 2023, and this is the Harvard Gazette. Do phones belong in schools? So this article was really interesting because they talk about how teachers and admin should learn to teach with tech instead of against it. And a lot of this article was kind of like pushing back on teachers and how teachers are teaching in the classroom. And I might need to go back and reread this, but a lot of it also talked about students are still experiencing, mind you, this was written in 2023. Students are still experiencing and coping with academic and social disruptions caused by the pandemic. Obviously, when the pandemic was going on, everybody was on their cell phone more than they should have been. but there was just not a whole lot going on at the time. I mean, there was a lot going on, but there was just not a whole lot to do. Everybody was stuck at home, so being on their cell phones, was inevitable, especially for kids. So they found it difficult for students to refocus when returning to in-person learning. So there's a little bit of the pandemic is still affecting these students that are now coming through to high school, and jumping back into learning in person made it really hard for students to refocus. The research that they found in this article suggests that even the presence of a smartphone can affect learning. So it kind of goes back to that anxiety piece of, even though my phone's right here and I'm not looking at it, I'm still distracted. Or even if my phone is flipped up and it's right here and there's a notification that goes off, like, I'm still going to have an increase in anxiety. Michael Rich, an associate professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School, discusses how multitasking is not actually multitasking, and he describes it as rapid switch tasking. So where kids and adults think that we're multitasking by being on our phone and doing something else that's productive, we're actually just rapid switch tasking, and we're jumping from thing to thing to thing so rapidly that we actually feel like we're multitasking, but we're really not. And then the rest of the article, which was a little tough to read as a teacher, suggests that it needs to be put on the teacher, and that he suggests designing more engaging learning activities and get students engaged in the lesson. So basically, why are students so distracted when they get into your classroom? Like, what is it with your lesson that students don't want to learn? And I don't think that this is necessarily a wrong statement, because I do think we as teachers can create more engaging lessons when possible. And I feel like there are always going to be those times where you have to sit and take notes, that it is what it is. But they're also saying, like, what types of classroom discussions, why aren't kids wanting to join the classroom discussion? And I think there are many reasons for that, and not necessarily that it is the teacher's fault that the lesson isn't as engaging. I don't necessarily love that they're kind of putting the blame on the teacher, but I do agree that teachers can have more engaging lessons. However, there are going to be some students that don't want to engage in certain types of lessons or certain types of classes. Like, there are students that I've seen that just flat out, like, they don't want to do it. They refuse. I don't like this subject. I don't like this. I don't like that. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how engaging the teacher is making the lesson, or how animated they are, or how passionate they are. There are just some kids that don't want to engage, and they would rather be on their cell phones. I think there's a piece of that opinion that could be used in the classroom, but I also think that that's not necessarily the answer. Okay, so what is the answer? I wanted to do this whole episode to be like a call to action type thing. So, what is the answer? Like, what I see in class right now are kids getting on their phones all the time to check notifications, to Snapchat, to text people back, to look at whatever app, TikTok mostly, that they're wanting to get on. But I also see a lot of kids sitting and playing games while trying to participate in the lesson. So the rapid task switching. And, like, I'll be in a math class and there are kids playing games on their computers while trying to take notes and learn the math lesson. And our teachers are wonderful. They, of course, go around and we check and make sure that everyone has turned all of their things off, or keep your Chromebooks closed or whatever. But there are still some instances where they will open them up sneakily and get on and try to manipulate the system. So there are a couple points that I think might help, or at least open the conversation and the discussion up. So really, what's the answer? So I kind of personally think that we should enforce disconnecting at times when kids are at home. And I think students need to form a really healthy relationship with technology. And when I say, like, forced disconnection, it is so easy, and I am so guilty of this. It's so easy for me to get home and immediately jump on my phone. Like, what's been going on all day long? I've not been on my apps at all. Like, I've had to be at work all day, and you just want to connect. And also, to go hand in hand with this, also allowing for that time for them to connect on their phone. So maybe you have 30 minutes or so whenever you get home to just dump it all out and get on the app and just pop everything up and what's going on. But then after that 30 minutes, like we mindfully put it away and we engage in, whatever else is going on in the family. I strongly feel that technology and social media can be very addicting just because I've suffered from that. And I feel like we should teach kids how to mindfully engage, but also to appropriately know when to turn a phone off. Like, do they know when is too much? When have you tapped out? When have you reached your limit? Like, how do we turn the phone off before we get to that place? I also feel like we should show kids and students and even young adults how rewarding life can be when you're engaging with other people around you and when you're not sucked into your phone all the time. Like, I know there's a huge thing with social anxiety and the phone is a comfort. Trust me, I have done the exact same thing. No one's talking to me at a social event and I feel awkward and I don't know what to do or who to talk to or what to say. I pull that cell phone out and then boom, I'm distracted from what's around me. I don't have to dive into the social anxiety and I can just distract myself with the phone. But I also feel like teaching really important social skills and like how to interact with the people around you is really, 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 really important. Another thing that I would really love for kids to learn how to do, and we can do this at school too, like this is not just for at home for parents, but encourage kids to interact positively on social media and on their phones. But let's also teach them that social media and how people present themselves is just a snapshot of their lives. And it's probably the best snapshot of their lives. Everyone, for the most part, is going to post the best aspects of their life. And then I feel like that this is exactly what happened to me. I feel like I saw everyone progressing in their lives after high school, and I was not. I was going through a lot of like personal family issues and trying to figure out my career, and I was behind, or I felt like I was behind everyone else in my schooling and like being in a relationship, and everybody was getting married, and I just was like comparing myself to so many people. And once I got off Facebook, it was I was like, oh, I can live my life. I don't have to worry about what so and so is doing. And then, only to get on years later to find out that those people's lives had completely changed. Like some of them were still in school years later while I was still in school. So it didn't really matter at the time, but in my brain at the time, it did matter. And I think kids see these perfect versions of people on social media and then they get the complex of, oh, I have to be like that, or that's what my life should be like. And then we start into the negativity of like, my life is not like that. Like now I'm sad and depressed and I've got anxiety and issues that I didn't even realize I had because I'm comparing myself constantly to all these other people that I see online. And it can be a really big struggle. Another thing that we need to do as teachers and at home is to teach students and kids how to deal with stress and anxiety appropriately and not to run to a distraction like our phones, just like I talked about in that social situation that I've had multiple times. So, how are we dealing with our stress and anxiety? What are we doing to curb it? What are we doing to help lessen and diminish that? Like, and it's, student by student basis. It's kid by kid. Like you can't just, not one solution fits all for stress and anxiety. So like, what does that person need in order to help them diminish and decrease their stress and anxiety? I want to help teach kids that it's okay to want to be on your phone and it's okay to want to hear from your friends and receive text messages and notifications on your app and to be involved in like group messaging and things like that. Like I think that's totally okay for kids to want to do that, but also it's okay if you don't receive a lot of that. Like it doesn't determine, your popularity or necessarily how much someone likes you or not. You know what I mean? Like I think it's totally normal to want those things, but also we need to know that that doesn't, define who you are by how many notifications and things that you receive. Two more points, I promise. I'm almost done. There's a time and a place for cell phone use, and I think we should teach our kids that. A lot of my teachers try to do that when we have independent work. Like they try to give them opportunities to listen to music, but we try to remind them to not be on all of those apps to where they're distracted from working. But there's a time and a place for cell phone use, and technology is really not going to go away. We're only getting more and more technology all the time, and greater, bigger, faster, stronger, everything. We're able to receive things way faster in our lives on our phones than we ever were, and the internet is only getting bigger and stronger. And I think just like learning how to positively integrate it into our lives and into the classroom, and how to teach students how to integrate it into their lives is really, really important. And then the last point that I have is just all of these are personal. Like none of these are science based. Like this is just all my personal opinions. But the last one that I have is I feel like meditation is really important. And I have been meditating on and off for years, but I have consistently been meditating for at least a year now. And for me, it's life changing. It feels like I've taken anti-anxiety, antidepressant medication before, and my meditations now feel like my medication. Like if I don't do it, I can tell. When I do it, I can tell. Obviously, not every day is perfect, just like if you were taking an actual anti-anxiety medication. However, it's so wonderful to disconnect and clear your mind and just go into an open space and like not have to worry about everything all at once. I meditate for at least 10 minutes before I go to work, especially if I work out in the morning. I have to work out and then I do a quick meditation and I get ready for work. And then when I get home, I do like a 30 to 45-minute one and just kind of like reset from work. I wish I could do the longer one in the morning because that would be a game changer. But even meditating for like 10 minutes is great to just kind of like get your mindset. And it's just wonderful. You just become more familiar with yourself. And I just think it's so powerful and so amazing. And I think more people should do it. And I think the world might be a happier place if more people meditated, but that's just my little spiel on it. So like don't get hung on up on that. Maybe try it, download the Calm app or something, and just there are tons of free meditations on YouTube, so try that. So that is my spiel today about kids being distracted in schools and how I think teachers and families can help. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode today. It was really interesting. This has been one that's been on my mind for a while. I've really wanted to dive into the research of it and learn some new things and try to learn some new ways to try to help students in class be as successful as they can be. And teachers help you guys be as successful as you can be and understand that the difficulties that you're going through are across the board and that you're not alone. And yeah, this is just a really interesting topic to discuss. So please comment down below if you have any suggestions for Teacher T podcast. I'm so happy you're here. If you stayed for the whole video, please like and subscribe if you want to see more content. Obviously, my YouTube channel is a mix of whatever I'm feeling at the time. So, but thank you so much for being a part of this community and being a part of my channel. And I'll see you in the next video.